All right, you are listening to an episode of Transparency and Merit. My name is Joe. What's going on? I'm here with Brian. What's going on with you?
Well, our title of our show is called The Power of Cancel Culture. And can it be stopped? Can it be reined in? Tomorrow, God willing, or whatever you believe in, we're gonna have Colin Flaherty on, and we've had him on many times before. I mean, not many times, but we've had him on. We've dealt with him. We've had this author on before, and he's been canceled, and those that follow him are recommend him also. Are threatened to be canceled as well. I've just been rereading his book, White Girl Bleed a Lot. It is on Audible. His other book, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, is not. But he just recently got his YouTube channel back. Mm-hmm. I don't know how that happened or for what reason that happened, but he is back on YouTube, and for a long time, he was not on YouTube. He had to go under basically he was really marginalized. And now he's I think he's back on as Colin Flaherty, but for a while it was under different types of sites. Now he's welcome to Focus. Now he seems to be back on and allowed to be back on, but he was on different under different pseudonyms and different names. One was Undeniable Truth. One was Dolomite, and it just kind of strikes me how powerful social media is. Social media basically created cancel culture, and then those who use social media that want to rail against and fight against cancel culture can't do it. When social media was a platform for everyone, and the people who were using the platform were using it for their, particularly the left was using it for their political purposes. And then when the right started to use it for their purpose, or those who were against what I call the civil rights industrial complex, when they were using it to blast them, they didn't like it, and they started to cancel YouTube channels, all forms of social media, and also many of these groups were going after people's jobs as well. A lot of people, lost their livelihood and even their potential livelihood in the future, because the left and the civil rights industrial complex, there's no act of contrition. It's all like, you must be punished. At least that's what it looks like to me, anyway. And I don't, because I've heard rumors that cancel culture is dying, but I don't know. I mean, I think that I think cancel culture, a lot of it has very much a strong hold on on the West, and particularly for the Anglosphere. You know what? That's what I almost wanted to name the show, Joe. I wanted to name it the Anglosphere, the countries that speak English. And the number one country, of course, in the Anglosphere is the United States. They say, I guess, the population, I thought it was 350 million, but it's 326 million and 766,748. And then United Kingdom with 66 million, Canada 36 million, Australia 24 million, and New Zealand has 4 million people. And I guess in the Anglosphere, the civil rights industrial complex, I think, has the strongest hold. And cancel culture comes out of the civil rights industrial complex and many of the offshoots of that. And they are, they seem to, like I said, to be very powerful. And, you know, they've been deplatforming people for years. First on, I mean, I remember railing about this when I first did the show, and I was kind of mocked for it. You know, I remember Mr. Solution would come on and say, oh, when's the last time you were on a college campus? This kind of thing isn't happening. And now it's happening stronger than ever, and it's also happening throughout social media. And a lot of these social media sites basically have a law protecting them, saying that they are an open platform. So, because they're saying they're not a publisher but an open platform, so they can't be sued. But then when something that they don't like gets on and it's offensive, then they basically will basically deplatform that channel or that page, and then they're definitely acting as a publisher, and they are denying people their rights. I wonder if under the 14th Amendment or the 1964 Civil Rights Public Accommodations Act, if they can be sued under that, because when the 1964 Civil Rights Public Accommodations Act, one of the things they used was the 14th Amendment and equal protection under the law. And these social media companies are influencing policy, and they're influencing culture. And when you deplatform people the way that they're doing it, they're basically the ones that are saying which culture, which norms and which policies society should follow. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing somebody laughing at. Is it something that I am saying? I'm curious because I hear the LOL on.
Where? I don't see it.
Oh, okay.
Preach free speech is what I'm seeing.
Yes, preach free speech, and yeah, I mean the truth is, yeah, free speech, and and I've said this before, the information age has quickly turned into the censorship age.
You know, you're gonna have to go into your Skype later and turn off your settings, because this is too. If you're doing an interview, this is gonna affect. Yeah, well,
this is by the way, this is this is my Discord settings that I have to go into.
Oh, you got to just make it so you get no notifications.
And
for each
did you
server.
change it? Because I thought you were.
Nope.
I thought you
No,
went in and
because
changed it.
it depends on how many servers you're in. You got to go into each of those servers and turn all the notifications off. Otherwise, it's going to happen.
Let me see here.
But do it after the show, because it takes time.
Yeah. So I was going to change off to some of the notifications, but
This is serious business, says Angela.
well, no, it is. It is serious business, and the truth is, like I said, these a lot of the and they are. Let's just be honest. They are leftist groups. It's the left that controls both the mainstream and the social media companies are all run by leftists, and that's the only thing that we hear at the moment. And let me see here if we have. I was going to let me see if I have what I have on my Facebook. Now, by the way, did you know that Ted Kennedy secretly asked the Soviets to intervene in the 1984 elections?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Where's that source coming from? I mean, how do you know this?
That source, let me see where the source is. It's from the Federalist.
Okay.
And it said that Ted Kennedy secretly asked the Soviets to intervene in the 1984 elections. And this is something that should really be kind of put out there, because that's just, I mean, it just shows how power hungry the Democrats were and how leftist they were. I mean, we were still at the height of the Cold War. And, I remember my family was completely and totally anti-communist. And like I said, today we have a presidential candidate that honeymooned in Moscow. Which, yeah. So, you know what? I have a person by the name. We had our story about Carl Karcher yesterday. And we had.
Do we have some responses?
I don't know if we had any responses, but this guy, John, Carl Karcher was accused of being a Nazi because he did support the candidate John Smits. I don't know for how long, and I don't think he ever publicly said anything that was against the Jews when Carl Karcher was financially supporting him.
Where,
but let's play.
Where's this comment?
Play a little bit of? Can we play a little
against inflation? He said.
Can we? Oh, I don't know. You know what? You know what? I'd rather you play it real quick.
Where is the conversation coming from? Where did you get that?
I got that from YouTube.
So somebody commented on the YouTube.
No. I'm saying that this was. I just wanted to play. Because today someone like this person would never be allowed on a college campus. This was in 1972. He was running for president, I believe, in the Independent Party. I think after George Wallace had got shot, I think that Schmidt came in and filled the reins for George Wallace. And this person, like if a person like this were around today, he would never be. I mean, there would be riots all over the place. Do you want to play a little bit of John Schmidt? I put him in the
No, you can sit there. Don't worry about it, because when he's speaking.
This is from October 28th, 1972.
Yes. I'm going to go to the restroom real quick. Just play him, and when I come back.
Would you like some water? Okay. Would you like some water? Is it Schmidt? No, she won't.
No. Oh, look at what that damn temperature has.
A chance for questions from the audience. There's standing mics on either end, so I hope you'll give them a chance to speak. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Grunfeld, and I'm chairman of the Speakers Program. Today we have a continuing encroachment of government into the liberties of citizens, while dissent, supposedly in the interest of standing firm behind America, is being stifled. There is a growing attitude that would do away with the basic civil rights guaranteed by the Constitution. And yet, whether it be from the right or the left, we need dissent to cast perspective, to infuse new life into a system that at times appears to be stale and stagnating. Today we have with us a man cast into that role. His past credentials include former president of Orange County Young Republicans, professor of poli-sci, history, and philosophy at Santa Ana College, state senator of Orange County from 1964 through 1970.
Wow.
Although President Nixon's personal U.S. representative to Congress, he is running for president on the American Party ticket. Please welcome John Schmitz.
For those, thank you, Jeff, for that nice introduction. You know, it was back in 1964 when I was first running for the state senate. In my very first speech, I was introduced as the bravest man in the West, and I made the mistake of asking why I was being thus introduced. And the person introducing me said, well, he thought that with all those World War II reissue movies going on all night on TV, that it took a heck of a lot of guts to run for office with a German name and a mustache. But, Eddie, it took a while. You have
That was the worst joke ever for that crowd.
seen the world.
But I'll tell you something. Today he would be He'd be like Antifa would be charging the stage at the moment this man was speaking. But let's continue on.
Yes. By the way, my cousins have had a band forever, and one of the famous aspects of the band is my cousin Ron is the keyboardist, and he always wore a mustache, and he would trim it small, and it created a frenzy at the beginning of the band's takeoff, which was ironically right around the same time their first album came out in 1972. So kind of interesting.
Have you? Okay. At any rate, for those of you who have heard that Congressman John Schmitz, the American Party candidate for president, has 7 children, and just so I can make this crystal clear, the young lady I'm traveling with here is the mother of our 7 children, my wife Mary. She is also my leading advisor on the Women's Lib Amendment, and she has twice ordered me to vote against the Women's Lib Amendment because she refuses to be lowered to the status of equality. Come on. And
Now, at that moment, by the way, I think Angela would have rushed the stage with her broom.
of you only know of
all of his jokes are bombing.
the American Party and its candidate as being conservatives. Some of you have the wrong idea of what a conservative is. You think a conservative is just someone who doesn't like making changes, likes things the way they always were, and wants them to remain that way. Now, I met someone that way a while back campaigning down south. He was plowing his fields with a pair of mules, and to strike up a conversation, I asked him why he was plowing with mules and everyone else was using tractors, and he was one of those who didn't like making changes. He said, my granddaddy plowed with mules, and my daddy plowed with mules, and what's good enough for granddaddy and good enough for daddy is good enough for me. Well, that wasn't real encouraging for asking him to vote for this new American Party. But I gave him the pitch, and I got the answer I rather expected. He said, no, I said, I can't vote for that new American Party. He said, my granddaddy voted Democrat, my daddy voted Democrat. What's good enough for granddaddy and good enough for daddy is good enough for me. Well, I asked, can I, now wait, conservatives, that's not the end of the story. You don't want to make changes. I asked him, well, can I go up to the farmhouse and talk to your wife? Maybe I can talk her into voting for this new American Party. He said, won't do you any good. And I said, why not? He said, well, I don't have a wife. I said, you don't have a wife? He said, no. He said, don't have a wife. He said, Granddaddy didn't have a wife, and Daddy didn't have a wife. What's good enough for Granddaddy and good enough? Now, by the way, speaking of that German name and a mustache, it does give us the only one of the few posters that you can't paint a mustache on, and it gives us that bumper strip. That German name, when you're out of Schmitz, oh, you painted a mustache on anyway, a different type. How about that?
Wow.
But with
Are you kidding me?
that German name, we've got that bumper strip you may have seen. When you're out of Schmitz, you're out of gear. Oh, that's pretty bad. Oh. Actually, our name used to be Smith.
He is absolute. This is unbelievable. It's like a stand-up comedian right now. This is unbelievable. He's
Did
just.
you remember? Hey, do you remember was it Dabney Coleman?
Sure.
The Buffalo Bill show?
Oh yeah.
Doesn't he kind of remind you a little bit of him?
Well, he sort of does. Yeah.
This guy is
The
this guy's
humor.
a real.
The humor he's laying down is very, Harvey Korman. Yeah, absolutely.
But this is, I mean, you know what I mean? This is like, he's almost like a character that someone would play in one of these conservative, like almost like an Archie Bunker type, you know?
And this is a 1-hour video. We're not going to play it all, but
No.
we'll play some more here.
Smith, the English version, but we had to change it to the German version because we found that when we got married as John and Mary Smith, we couldn't get a motel room anywhere, so we changed it to the German version.
Jeez.
Now, all right, now we've.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not really appealing to the sympathy vote, believe me. What I want to do is talk about the real issues. You know, we are not here, or the American Party is not here as a third party. We're here as a second party. You know, George Wallace 4 years ago said there wasn't a dime's worth of difference between the Republicans and the Democrats, and the only difference now is you could get your dime back on that one. Any differences between Richard Nixon and George McGovern could be, and I hope in the future will be, solved in a Socialist Party primary. Now, I find that, I find that, especially in colleges, college students are very anti-totalitarian, but they're very pro-socialist. They miss a very important point. They miss a very important point, and that's that socialism and communism, socialism and communism are not economic systems at all. They're control systems. They're used by totalitarians. It's as simple as that. And the real issue is totalitarianism. That's the real issue in this election. And Richard Nixon, in 4 years in office, under the guise of moderate conservatism, has totalitarianized this country faster in 4 years than anyone I've seen. By the way, gee, I got a lot of supporters here. By the way, if you think I'm beating the drums for George McGovern, you're wrong. I'm not. He's so far left, he's in danger of falling off the earth. But
Flat earther.
by the way, how's that for being non-paranoid? I'm drinking this water without a taster. How about that?
Wow.
Yeah. It's fluoridated, isn't it? Yeah.
Why?
Well.
This guy's unreal.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let me get back to this. By the way, for those of you who, McGovernites, who think you're in the crusade of the young and the poor and the non-white, why don't you ask yourself where all that money came from? That was a mighty well-oiled crusade of the young and the poor and the non-white, wasn't it? Yeah, about quarter. Oh, look, what money. Look, we're the party, the thin cats. Our largest, the American Party's largest contribution is $6,000 from a North Dakota farmer who decided that government subsidies weren't worth government controls. And he's right. And, any government big enough to give you everything you want is also big enough to take away everything you've got. And right now we've got the... at one end, those of inherited wealth who sock their money into tax-free foundations and avoid paying taxes and use those tax-free foundations for political leverage. They're at one end, and at the other end, you've got those who find that the difference between working and not working isn't worth working for. And in the middle, you've got those overburdened taxpayers who are getting a little tired of carrying the load for the whole bunch. You know, I've boiled our platform, the American Party platform, down to 2 planks. Never go to war unless you plan on winning. And those who work ought to live better than those who will not work. It's as simple as that. Now, you thumbs down on that one. You think people who don't work or will not work ought to live as well as those who work? Come on now. Oh boy, I tell you, what a brain laundry this place must be. You really think that those who don't work and will not work ought to live as well as those who work? Oh boy. Oh man, I tell you, look, let me get in and talk about totalitarianism. As I pointed out, Richard Nixon, under the guise of moderate conservatism, has been totalitarianizing this country. He's the best Pavlovian psychologist in action. You know, he's the best living example of that old adage that if you get the reputation of being an early riser, you can sleep till 11.
This guy has just an unbelievable array of jokes under him. But what are you thinking?
Well, you know, it gives you real, because I remember a little bit of the. This schism was before my time, but there was a time when moderate and conservative Republicans really hated each other.
Yeah.
And
you can see it here.
Oh yeah, no, I mean they hated each other worse than they actually hated each other worse than the Democrats. There was and I you know, during the Reagan era they kind of put an end to that, you know, because it was really dividing the party, and they were going to kind of lose. And Reagan was really the first, like, conservative Republican to run and win, and they haven't had one since. And then I guess I wouldn't say Trump is, but Trump was an outsider who basically came in and, you know, people say that the establishment on all sides didn't like him. There's always been, though, a leftist establishment that kind of tries to say that it's just progressive, but I've heard it said that they don't call themselves communists anymore. They call themselves progressives. But they have kind of a Shangri-La. They believe that if things go their way, that it will turn into heaven. And if just the police acted correctly and businesses acted correctly and we could have fairness and equality, and if they, you know, that's one of the reasons why there is cancel culture. There is, there is Antifa. These people believe that, you know, it's kind of like a religion. They believe in their cause and they believe in their faith. I was watching a thing called "Is Anti-Racism a Religion?" And it is. In my opinion, anti-racism has turned into a faith, and the way they describe racism and bigotry has become a faith and a doctrine. And if you question it and you question that thought process, they will go after you like a religious fanatic. And it's just kind of sad, and that's why we don't have freedom of speech the way we should, because we have a lot of fanatics, particularly on the left. I don't see anything on the right quite like the left does when it comes to attacking freedom of speech and cancel culture. Like I said, on Monday, Martin Luther King holiday, we are going to have Colin Flaherty, We're going to do it on Blog Talk because our show comes in better. Now, if you do call in and have a question, we will put the question. You can put the question to him, but we will be using the mute button rather liberally because we don't want anyone taking over the show. We want people to ask a question, and then us and the co-host can go from there. And I see someone's calling. I can't add you in, but I can add you in.
Yes.
Angela has called. Can we add her into?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as he's talking, now Angela comes. She originally came from Oklahoma and Arkansas, and we are in the heart of Hollywood, Joe and I. So cancel culture is far more powerful than
Angela, you're here and your camera is on. How's it going?
Oh, I think I fixed it.
Yeah.
Turn back the camera. Come on, turn it on, baby.
Turn it back on.
No, but
Well, my hair is up in a bun, and never mind that.
That ain't
let's see
funny.
your beehive. Show us your beehive.
Come on.
Oh my God. All right. Elitism. I think the far left, the progressives, or social democrats, but they're twerking the social democratic label. If you look at AOC and Biden, if they were in Europe, they would not be in the same political party at all. And she's asking people to donate to her campaign, by the way, because I think there's 10 people running against her. So that's a little side. We need to be aware. I mean, perhaps the gentleman that you had the video of, he was talking about encroachment. I think a lot of Americans do not even understand what an encroachment is. You know, we need to do social studies all over again. Because
Well, in
there's
my
not
opinion,
rules. Go ahead.
my grandfather believed if you encroached on him, he would take a step back and he would pull out his firearm and he'd say, you know what, you better not come any closer.
Yes.
And,
And
you
if
know,
you... Ed?
yeah, the only reason someone has to encroach upon you is to do you physical harm. So when somebody encroaches upon me, I take that as a...
They want to take control. Everything's about control. The Communist Party, about control. Even the policies we have in the States, it's about control. You know, the education system, it's about control. You know, control the narrative. You're going to control the country by the balls. And they never let go of you.
Now, Angela, why are you a Democrat? Because, I mean, the way you're talking right now is not... Or, you know... I guess, because, I mean, Tim Pool, by the way, I don't know if you're familiar with him, he talks about this same thing with the social justice warriors and the cancel culture, and he actually supports Bernie Sanders, but he said cancel culture is trash, it's garbage, and the left is, much of the left is real trash and just total garbage.
No, I don't think that's true. I don't think that most of the left, I think when you talk in extremes, you lose people, Mr. Midnight Movie, or Brian.
Well, don't you think a large portion of the left is, I mean, what do you think of cancel culture?
Well, I don't like it because it can be easily turned against a community, whatever that community might be. Like, for instance, you know, I talk about Tulsa and their African-American culture, Black Wall Street and all that. They had a huge momentum going, and now it's been reversed against them because they want the live PD, the show that you can find on the networks, to be canceled, for the contract to be canceled. And they're getting a lot of pushback, and I think some of it rightfully so. I mean, it can change on a dime, and people need to realize that the victim that could happen next will be your community. You know, I think we need to look at how we get control of a community, of a state, of a country. How does this all intertwine? Because, I mean, both sides do it, both the extremes do it. But as far as the Democrats, we're not all progressives. But it's changing. It is changing as the young population is becoming more talented, grabs more policy positions, and it's changing. I don't know what's going to happen in Milwaukee, which I'm thinking about going, but Milwaukee meaning the Democratic National Convention. I'm conflicted this time. I'm very conflicted. Concluded.
Yeah, I'm certainly not, first, I mean, for me, I've never been into the left. So, but I'm seeing, it has surprised me how powerful this cancel culture and the left has become. And I think they've metastasized themselves in our country, and not only in our country, but it seems like the Anglosphere, those, through the West as well, through Germany and France, they use the word racist a lot, and it's kind of code word for getting control of what you want, and it is to a degree weaponized.
Yes.
Against the people, and it's certainly weaponized against people of European descent, and even in the countries where it's their ethnicity. I mean, America is different. America is built on an idea, not an ethnicity, but it's grounded within Europe, and it is part of the Anglosphere. And it's like I said, any mention of any kind of troubles that whites have or any grievances that we have were met with hard, just hard backlash. And not only, I mean, they don't even allow us to talk. We can't even. There are issues we can't even. I mean, if Joe and I wanted to rent a place and talk about Colin Flaherty and have because he wrote the book White Girl Bleed a Lot. If we were to have a White Girl Bleed a Lot award ceremony, they would shut that down. They would at least attempt. Oh, yeah.
Are you talking California or other states?
I'm talking about California. I'm talking about in
Mr. Midnight Movie, that's a great idea. That is a great idea.
Yeah.
I like that idea. I really do. But I have to say, when you said it's become weaponized, whoever holds that gun is going to be able to control that weapon. And it's now flipping towards the alt-right, that they're saying they're being disenfranchised. And partially that's true, partially it's not. I mean, what we have today is a lot of whiners. They whine a lot. Both of the extremes. And I, for one, I'm really tired of it. I'm like, really? I
mean, the right doesn't even have a chance to whine. They're shut down before they can say really anything.
You ought to look at those comments in Tulsa. I mean, they're very conservative. They say things like you should have raised your children better, and maybe that's partially true. I mean, it depends on who's holding the weapon where the bullet goes. You got to see my point there.
Well, I mean, and I think things may be different in Oklahoma than they are in California. In California, it used to be it was a moderate, it was a center-right state.
That's true.
And now it's a completely, there's no moderate, there's no center, it is left. It is leftist.
No, got that. But in Oklahoma, the reason why I think it's a good example, it's a very conservative Republican state. There are only 3 Democratic counties out of 78 counties. The rest are Republican. So I think it's a good comparison to the world you might be experiencing. in the world that Oklahomans are experiencing, the far left to the far right. That's why I'm saying it matters who's holding that gun, where the words are weaponized. I can't believe you said that. It depends on who's sending the bullets. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll tell you something, because there were two things that the internet, particularly YouTube, attacked. Are really were the internet and social media, where the conversation was one was atheism, and atheist views really started to kick off, and then two, people started to tackle the establishment, and what I call the civil rights industrial complex. They started to say, wait a minute, diversity and the stuff that Black Lives Matter is preaching, not so true. And we started to, whites started to have their own grievances. For example,
Right.
they are attacked often. I mean, black mob violence is a thing. Just as they say police violence against blacks is this thing, well, we're saying that black on white racial hostility and violence is an issue. And
Well, why don't we call it minority violence? Because it's not just African American, Native American.
okay.
Have you seen how they type? Oh my! And I have to be very careful when I say that.
Well, what I've gathered with Colin Flaherty, he's pointed this out, and I don't know if this is happening in other countries, but in America, all groups who live close to blacks are going to face some form of racial hostility and possible violence. Now, in Chicago, and this was, I forget how many years ago this was, but there was a white drunk woman who was dropped off. She was arrested for intoxication, and she was dropped off into a black neighborhood, and she was later murdered. And the judge and the jury found that dropping her off in a black neighborhood was caused her death, and they should have known. Police should have known better to do that, and they were sacrificing her safety.
Well, LA is just as bad. The hospitals dump out their patients on Skid Row, where they have these medieval diseases that are come back because of poor sanitation.
If we're talking about the homeless, it's gotten it's horrible.
But I'm talking about the hospital. They shouldn't be dumping them off in the street, where Skid Row is. They just dump them off. Let's say they don't have insurance and they're not able to identify where they live. They dump them off.
And let me say, because I've dealt with one of the things that they deal with is these people have phantom pains, and a lot of them are schizophrenic, and they drive. They take away, because when you're working in a hospital, you're dealing with some serious life and death issues, and when someone is cuckoo or crazy, they are complaining about phantom pains and this and that. So a lot of times, Angela, they're dealing with a large volume of people, and basically some of these people, sometimes these hospitals will get restraining orders against some of these homeless people because they stay there just to take a bed, and they also they don't want to cooperate. A lot of the homeless a large portion of the homeless problem, they're drug addicts and they don't want to cooperate with the rest of society. It's not just that they're down on their luck; they're also mentally ill and drug addicts, and I think that's the majority of them. that are staying there.
That's where you're at. But that's not the majority of the country. I guess we need to come back. I think we need to come back with some numbers. Just
you know
let me
what?
finish.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
As a person that's had to go to the ER or be admitted to the hospital, I've run across those nurses or doctors that think I'm, what's the word? No, not that. Pain seeking. And what I would be seeking would be antibiotics. And I wouldn't take their shots of Ativan and all these different things that they would try to give me. And I've come across that attitude in the medical establishment where they are elitist, where they think they're better because they assume maybe because I'm poor that I'm a drug seeker, that I'm homeless, that I'm all of the above, a bad person. And that's frustrating.
Well, Angela, when you're on the other side of it and you have a lot of people to deal with, and if somebody acts, to them a little bit off, their radar goes off and they say, hey, this person is kooky, they're not reasonable, and we're going to have to deal with them in a psychiatric manner, and we're going to have to possibly deal with them in a... What's that?
I've been in the ER waiting room sometimes for a very long time. I've seen many different scenarios. And if the person doesn't realize what year it is, there's pretty big tells that they're dealing with more than just a pain. And people with mental health issues, they do have pain. Sometimes they have gut pain, a lot of gut pain, because there's a connection between the gut and the brain. I'm sure Joe can comment on that further, and I'll leave that where it lies.
Well, I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole, but they do say our stomach is our second brain. Absolutely.
Yes. So I think there is a correlation there.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, and I hear you on that. It's just some people with mental illness are not. They don't. They're not babbling idiots. Some of them are master manipulators, master controllers.
Narcissists, abuse past. There's a lot of people that fit that. Politicians do that.
When you're dealing in a hospital, you're dealing with a large portion of the public.
True.
That is very demanding. And then here's the deal. This is what I ask people on the left. So, let me ask you this, Angela. Are you for open borders?
Oh, gosh. I felt certain ways at different points in my life. And the thing about the borders, it's a changing situation. I think it's a lot more inflammatory at this point, because there's more dangers that we know about. Perhaps those dangers have always been there, but they're more public now.
Let me ask you this. So when you're in a waiting room, you're in a hospital waiting room, and, like I said, we could all be there, like we can't afford to pay for it. Would you be willing to give up? Because my question is, would you be willing to give up your spot in line when you're in a hospital waiting room to an illegal immigrant?
Well, everybody...
Say it again?
You faded out, Angela. Say it again.
Sorry, I'm in the woods. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, the woods of hatred. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. But everybody's guaranteed treatment regardless of citizenship, ability to pay. I do have insurance, but I have given up my spot to someone that I knew that was worse off than I was, and that someone was a child, and they were Latino. I don't know what country, but I think in the greater good, and that can never be wrong.
Okay, so you say the greater good. So if like I said, to a degree, because a lot of people see immigration like this. Our nation is in a sinking ship, and the other nations are sinking faster, and they want to come aboard our ship that's already filled to capacity through, social welfare programs. Like the medical industry is already shocked, and I don't know if you've ever been on the receiving end of worked for any of these social programs and stuff, and been like a person dealing with a long line of poverty. It's daunting. And if you ask anyone who's worked in the medical field, like, do you want to deal with more patients and more people when you're filled to the brim already?
I would have to say that they would want more resources, because I've heard them talk about this. I have friends, doctors and surgeons. And I'm sure you do too. They just don't have enough people. They don't have enough resources. They don't have enough beds. They want more of that. I've never heard that, let them go somewhere else. Let them eat cake. Never heard that argument.
But we have poor people of our own. Why do we need more poor people to fill up our hospital beds and our schoolyards?
Well, I don't believe every single patient in an ER waiting room is an illegal.
I didn't say it was a 2/3.
I don't know how you want to say that. Well, and people get so upset if you say it a certain way.
Well, yeah, I know, but it's really, well, there is a technical term called illegal alien. I guess we're not allowed to use anymore because of cancel culture.
Right. But, it's true. And it's frustrating even if you're on the left. How do you not offend people? When that's not your intent at all. And I don't think conservatives mean to offend people. But life is offensive. Life is offensive.
Yeah, you're right. What was I going to say about illegal alien?
About waiting rooms, as far as the nurses, the staff, I've never heard them say that they wanted to turn things away, get people away. They wanted to have more resources. That's what I've heard. And I've talked to a lot of doctors. I'm really the loud person in the ER. Like when my doctor,
if I were a nurse or a doctor, I would not want to see you if I was on a busy day.
Big question. When we got to see that specialist in Arkansas, my daughter's having a physical problem, for those I don't know. He actually slid out of the doctor's office, the little patient wait room, because I was asking so many questions. Well, what about this? What about that? Because if I don't ask, I'm not going to get the answer. And I found that the squeaky wheel gets all the oil. Do you know what happened?
What?
Well, my daughter is having a procedure later this month, and the head of surgery is doing her procedure. That's how loud I was. And I'm talking about and asking questions and sending emails. Are you sure we can't be seen today? I did that the whole week we were in Little Rock, and I got in. It's impossible to get in to see these doctors. It takes 6 months. It took me 3 days. Mm-hmm. You got to speak up, and you're doing a great job of doing that.
All right, Brian, wake up.
Yes.
All right, where are we going?
I'm woken up. You know what? I think all that's been said has been said. And I do thank Angela for coming in and speaking. Like I said, on Monday we're gonna have Colin Flaherty again.
Yes.
And I think I'm gonna ask him some more pointed questions, because a lot of people know. We'll go into a little bit of the black on white mob violence, but I want to go into the censorship and the deceit and the denial, because he always says black mob violence and black racial hostility and the deceit and denial. And I would also add not only deceit and denial, but downright censorship. Because I don't think there's deceit and denial anymore. I think there's active censorship that's going on, and active I don't know what active marginalization and purposefully marginalizing groups that speak out about it. And I almost want to say to them, look, I'm not your white boy. You can't do to me whatever you want and for me to go along with it. I don't agree. I dissent.
Good.
You know? Yeah. So
You have to speak up. But may I have a closing thought before you shut it down?
Sure.
Absolutely. Go for it.
All right. You know, one thing I'm concerned about is how do we get to that middle ground where people aren't trying to trash your livelihood because you said something offensive to them, no matter what extreme they're on. That's an issue. I'd like to have Colin's thoughts on that. You know, that middle ground. And then also, if he's followed what's going in Tulsa, how they have this momentum, it's more of a bully campaign, more of a bully to try to shut people down. How do we change that culture? And it's different throughout the states. So I guess that's it. I really want to know how to find that middle ground where we can be a more functional country. And I'm concerned about the National Archives. They even, in 2017, the Women's March, they started to filter out, I guess you would call it, signs that were not friendly to Trump. They blurred them out. It's a big thing now. I guess people just finally noticed. But if the National Archives can be pressured into doing such a thing, you know, what else are they pressured to do on either side of the extremes? So I thank you for having me on. It's always an honor. And I think this should be an ongoing discussion.
I agree.
Concluded.
I agree. And it's good for Americans to say I dissent, or, you know, and I dissent to any kind of censorship and the type of punishment that these people have, the types of consequences that these people have had for people speaking their mind and speaking their feelings is just, it's outrageous what's going on. And I hope that freedom and liberty and freedom of thought can really reign, and we can put the hammer down on this horrible cancel culture. Joe, anything else to add?
No.
The Young Turk, shut them down.
Well,
I mean,
they've got a lot of money behind them now. They are a major player in the mainstream media.
By the way, we'll do a show on the Young Turks sooner or later. But they have, from my understanding, they have Saudi Arabian money.
Well, I mean, they're Turks. I mean, come on. You know, what a golden opportunity. I mean, that's your district. You know, go protest. Don't let him get elected to office.
Well, Cenk is running. He's running in District 25. That is my area, and I think we're going to get an opportunity to go and see him and bring our points of views to the event wherever it is. We'll see.
He's got to have town halls, debates. You know, have your questions ready to throw him off. You know, don't let him get by with a joke.
I'm going to tell you something, Angela. Cenk Uygur is learned to protect himself, and he will. There are certain people he won't talk to. Now he'll talk to other conservatives, but some of the people like Tim Pool, and I want to mention his show. I hope people who listen to us, the few people that do listen to us, if they can just look at Tim Pool. Cenk Uygur screamed at Tim Pool and called him a Trump supporter and will not be interviewed or will not talk to him, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if you go to a town hall, which he'll have to do, if you go to a debate, which he'll have to do to win this office, he can't control what you ask. That's public. And film it. You know, use your show as press. Get a press pass. It's not that hard. You know, you can use my entity, Political Woodstock. We can make it where you have a press pass. Think about it. You know, do something proactive, because I think he's very destructive, in my opinion. Not because of the policies he wants to project, but how he does it. See, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. It's how you play the game. And it's so slimy. But most politicians are.
Oh, there are videos going around of the Young Turks, by the way. I might, and I posted them on my Facebook page and on Twitter.
And the public Facebook page that people can find you on?
Well, you can look us up at the Organization of Transparency and Merit. Or is it?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And you can. We are on Facebook, Angela. If you want to check out our videos.
On Twitter. Does your show have a Twitter page?
Yes, it does.
Transparency and Merit.
Okay. Cool.
It's Cali
I'm gonna have to
OTM.
follow those.
Cali OTM on Twitter. Anyways, yeah, that's it. We're gonna wrap this up. Like, subscribe, leave comments, people. We're not.
Challenge these guys.
Yeah, man.
Well, they won't. You know that the problem is they won't be. They won't. Some of these social justice warriors are basically just shutting people down. They're not challenging. So yeah, like and subscribe. Hopefully we can get bigger and we can basically challenge this cancel culture. Hopefully others will get shows and also challenge this I would say this kind of witch hunt that the cancel culture and the civil rights industrial complex have become. It's time perhaps to resist. All right, that's all. Monday.